Hi, everybody. Woo! My name is Karina Pop. I am a visiting faculty member here at the NYU Game Center, and I want to welcome you to the last speaker night of our lecture series. Thank you for coming. I also want to thank our sponsors, Empire State Development and Take-Two Interactive, for making stuff like this possible. So I want to introduce TJ Hughes to you. So I have only met TJ in person one other time in 2018 in Amsterdam at a film festival. And we were like the only game people there. And so, we kind of like found each other to introduce ourselves, and it was really cool. But little did TJ know, I was actually already a fan of his work and had in fact backed his game, Nour, Play With Your Food, on Kickstarter. Nour is an experimental food art game in which you play around with a variety of foods in a veritable buffet of physics, music, and like literally a buffet of food, right? Nour's style is really killer. I feel like that's the thing that gets you at first. There's bright colors, lights, glitter, jellyfish, etc. And you're sort of struck with it, right? And when you are playing the game, you are like, for example, looking at a bowl of ramen, and you're like, what do I do with this ramen? Can I pick up the noodles and like throw the noodles around? Can I make a soup that's just exclusively nori? Can I set the bowl on fire? And Nour unambiguously answers those questions with yes. I think that's so exciting, personally. Nour distills play into its essence, unfettered by the conventions of games, and makes a meal of like possibility. So, I want to welcome the chef himself. Please join me in welcoming TJ Hughes.
Yo. That was an amazing intro. That was great. So what's up? I'm TJ. Nour launched in 2023 for desktop and PlayStation. And then earlier this year launched on Switch. And I gave a short retrospective earlier this year on the game at GDC. But I thought I'd use this as an opportunity to kind of go a bit more in depth on some of the topics I touched on then. So this is a longer post-Nourdom than the one I gave at GDC. We're doing puns. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So I'm based out of St. Louis, Missouri, where we got toasted raviolis and pizza made with cheese product. More on that after this talk if you're curious about that. And my sensibilities as far as visuals go have always felt somewhat innate. As a kid growing up, I've always noticed my attention leaning in a certain direction. When it comes to when I'm like appreciating something, like I've always had this like fascination with light and color as early as I can remember. My favorite toys as a kid were any ones that had some kind of like semi-translucent or like jelly property to it. This is kind of like one of those like, I don't know, jelly timer things. You like turn it upside down and it just like has like a jelly thing that goes like all the way down. I don't know. There's not like a word for what that is, but just anything like that, I would just notice I'm just like drawn to it, and I could never quite figure out why. My favorite media was similarly like a colorful, vibrant art style pretty much determined whether or not I liked something. And so like one of the first games I played, Sonic the Hedgehog, huge influence on me. I always like things like SpongeBob, like just anything where there's like a bunch of characters that are like all different colors and like has just a general vibrance and color palette to it. And also, as long as I could remember, I would have these vivid dreams of like palaces and indoor water parks that I had never been to, and that's something that I could never quite explain, but I just always had that kind of like inside me. My cousin was over for Thanksgiving recently and started dogging on me about getting us killed whenever we played video games growing up. And this was long before I was actually good at games before I was like a low plat Reinhardt main. But my redemption arc is out here now that I'm into more competitive games. But I was I would never get over things like, oh, that tree is just a flat image that's facing me at all times, and then I would always like see and appreciate those ways in which games kind of trick your eye. To the point where, yeah, I would get us killed when we're playing like multiplayer games. You'd be like, yo, like pay attention, man. And I'm just like, but wait, but look, like, don't y'all see this, you know? And so with that description of a kid that loved video games for completely different reasons than were considered normal, picture this. So freshly out of high school, going to my first game developers conference, thanks to the studio I worked for at the time, Happy Badger Studio. I collaborated with them on a game called Smugglecraft. I did tech art. So I was out at GDC in San Francisco for the first time, completely oblivious to the fact that ramen even was a dish served outside of like packaged instant noodles. I'm also like discovering bubble tea for the first time, which hopefully I like hope we can appreciate how aesthetic that it is. Like it's just really like just the most colorful aesthetic drink out there, basically. And so in the next year after GDC, I'm sitting there fully inspired by like everything I'm picking up, all these new like food experiences I'm having. And then also I'm hungry, but the ramen shop outside my apartment at the time was closed. And this was kind of the catalyst that inspired everything. So inspired and hungry, I started making food gifts and tweeting them out. Mostly just messing around, like I wasn't trying to start an entirely new project. I was in part like testing everything I had learned because I had recently picked up shaders, or at least was introduced to the concept of shaders. I couldn't like code shaders from scratch or anything like that. I was still kind of getting there. But I had learned different techniques such as like depth blending and just like alpha clipping, just things like that. And I was looking for a subject to sort of test out these new techniques on, and that's where food kind of entered the picture. I instantly thought of food when I was thinking of these different techniques and stuff like that. I would notice how in drinks and in noodles, like there's like subsurface scattering, like light just passing through slightly to objects and like kind of giving them this like illumination throughout the entire object, not just on the flat surfaces. And I like noticed that games didn't really put that much detail. Like they usually those things would be overlooked when designing. Like, you know, food is always like a background prop or something like that. But like I really wanted to make HD food in a game that's like kind of the focus. And when I started making these GIFs and uploading them to Twitter, I didn't expect the response to be so universally positive. Folks would always tell me like, wow, this instantly makes me hungry. And it was to the point where like I probably accidentally increased Postmates revenue a bit. Like it was to that point. And so from all this came Nour. So I started Nour as a game when a friend saw me posting GIFs and wanted me to show the project at his like art event, like DIY art event. And it wasn't a game at the time, so I just told him like, you know, I'm gonna see what I can do. And so I started jamming together some controls. I just got a keyboard, plugged it in, and whatever button I could hook up to a command I did. So I just started with the first few buttons in the middle of the keyboard, And it was really simple, like just press a button, a food appears, and then you can go on to the next scene if you want to. And that has kind of evolved since then. I've experimented with all sorts of different controllers, and actually I'm going to try to experiment with a new controller now. So I'm going to try to Alt-Tab over to the game. Let's see. And okay, can we see that? Okay, sweet. If you scan this QR code here, you can go over to the chat in the NYU Game Setter's Twitch account. And so once you're in there, try just like typing a food name, like any food that you would expect to appear here, maybe some that you don't. And yeah, just see what happens. I'm really, really curious. Starting off some cheese. I like how someone tried cheese like right away. An entire pizza. Yeah, sure, that goes in ramen. Soggy bread. I wonder how many foods are getting rejected now, like, that we don't have in there. But yeah, you can try things like cherry. There might be like cantaloupe. Yeah, someone figured out apple. Wow, cantaloupe worked. Okay, sweet. I'll just let this go for a little bit. I'll let y'all experiment. Okay, who knew about the hoverboard? That's a deep cut. Someone knows about that. Incredible. Wow, y'all know the controls better than me. This is beautiful. And everything on fire, of course, of course. Someone figured out that you can slurp the ramen broth away. It's amazing. Also, nice. And a full reset. Beautiful, beautiful. All right. Cool. I think I'll go back to the slides in just a second here. Get your last commands in. Someone's really on this fire. A whole plate. Brilliant. And another hoverboard. Well done, y'all. Alrighty. All right, I'm gonna pause that and then go on back on to our slides. All right, thanks for our first Twitch Plays Nour experiment. I'm super happy that worked. I was not sure. Shout out Max for coding that together. Love you. All right. So Before Nour was like in development, I was already bit by the whole like games as art bug. I did work on this project called Coda. It was a collaboration between the studio I used to work at, Happy Badger Studio / Rampant Interactive, and the Pulitzer Arts Foundation, local to St. Louis, Missouri. And it was an exhibit where there were African art reliquaries in this database, and there are all these cards that had different like statistics about them, their like region, different like measurements about the actual like figures themselves, and we were in the middle of this room with a touchscreen in the middle, and I did lead programming on this project. You can just like take cards and sort them into different stacks, and it told you more and more about the cards, and all this ran on Unity, and this was something that really just like proved to me that you can have something that's technically a game, but just like in a totally removed setting than the one you might be used to. And as I was working on Nour, it actually, a few folks bit as far as the whole like having an installation for the game. This was Output. This happened in Shanghai, I believe, in like 2018, 2019. And I had tapped into something that I didn't even really know I was getting into, because I had a few different exhibits that around that time. Two of them were focused around the idea of the I believe it was called the Futurist Cookbook, which was something that talked about just food and technology and that overlap. And Nour was kind of a perfect fit for those kind of exhibitions, because here was something that was fully interactable. You can go up, interact with a controller, fully accessible. And it was something that really lended well to these spaces. It started a lot of conversations about food, and I think that was something that I really pulled from this, was just the different anecdotes folks had of surrounding food. I got a few recipes, got a few like restaurant recommendations, made tons of friends and tons of connections. And so I think that's something that like games as installations can really lend to folks. So designing for non-traditional gameplay. Designing a game with no conflict is similar to writing a short story with no conflict. It's hard. Stories kind of revolve around conflict or like adversarial situations happening to a character. But this one has no characters, no goals or objectives even, so like divorcing even further from the concept of a game. But at the same time, writing a story, like having a story without conflict, involves finding meaning in objects, their form, and their nature. And I feel like Nour has a heavy focus on what makes certain objects distinct and what gives them character. So it's not like these stories are completely without character. It just takes a different form than you might expect. One example, I don't have a slide of this, but it was that like there was a slice or like a little just like square of butter in the game, and that like had a little tiny fandom form around it. Folks were just like super like into it, and it was just like, yeah, the glowing butter square. And like that was just such an example. And like when you saw the like pizza spawn earlier, like it's just like little moments like that that really create the character, create the story of just like, I just made a mess with this, like I just dipped toast into ramen broth. Like that's kind of the emergent like little like stories and bits of joy that kind of come from a project like this. So one of the most important things in experimental games is feel. I think since you don't have traditional mechanics to keep people hooked. I feel like just some sort of satisfaction, whether that be visual or like tactile. I think that's what really sells the game to folks and really like draws them in. With live demos that I've shown in different places, I've always shown it with the MIDI Fighter 3D. It's this 16 button MIDI controller. It's funny enough, actual like arcade buttons that are on this controller, but it's usually used for like making music, making beats and stuff like that. But it comes full circle when folks are now using it. Like I'm using it for an actual game, so it's just kind of back to that context, but not exactly a game, sort of an art experience. And translating this whole experience to controller was definitely a challenge, because like while it's like super satisfying still on controller, we nearly ran out of buttons. Like as you could even see with text chat, there's just like a lot of different things you can do in the game. And one thing that we did was we used different microphone controls. So you could blow into the microphone. That'll because okay, a little context. The DualSense, I believe it's called, has a microphone built into it, and so that really enabled us to do this. But you can blow into the microphone. That'll blow all the food away. You can make a slurp sound, and that'll draw all the food towards you. Max, once again, did that. My teammate, he made this like it was a way for the game to detect slurps using machine learning, but it was like our own little like machine learning thing that was contained within the game. So we basically just had to source data by slurping a ton of times into the microphone and just like sending it to him. It's not perfect, but it's still like it does the job. We have tools, spells, and what we call meter. So as you're playing the game, if you play to the beat of the music in the background, you'll build what's called meter, and then you can use that. You can spin that on spells, and so that's things like the fire that you saw earlier during that demo, and like the freeze as well, and so like there's this little like bit of just like, okay, Nour is a little bit of a rhythm game, but once again, like it's not requiring you to do any of this. There's no like, there are like unlocks, and like the game does recognize when you do these certain actions, but it doesn't require that to like progress or anything like that. And as far as progression goes, that was a really hard design challenge for us to try to fix, because the question becomes how, in a game without goals, scores, objectives, like a boss to defeat, how do you move forward? And it took me a long time to, like a lot of thinking to figure out if I was just gonna leave it as like, oh, the player can move on whenever they want, because then that makes it makes the experience really short, as just like you can just speed through the game if you really wanted to. And I think I kind of just led it to that. The thing I told myself was like, if that's really what they want to do, but like if you actually take your time and go through the game and look at every single little thing, it actually takes you quite a bit. And so I had faith that players would want to do that instead of just like kind of speeding through just to get the trophies or whatever. Which I'm sure there's some players that do that. There's people who buy entire Steam games just for the trading cards and stuff. But I really find that when I have demos of the game up, people really take their time, and sometimes they'll spend the entire time demoing on just one level, because they're just so fascinated by it. And there's like around like 20 of them. So it really, the mileage of the game really varies, like the actual playtime. So like, and whenever people ask me what the playtime of the game is, I never really know what to tell them. It's really kind of up to your own exploration. And one more thing to mention is, in order to progress in the game, something I have is, you actually zoom the camera out of the level, and that is how you actually exit the level. And that was something that we kind of cooked up later on. And I think it really serves as a kind of immersive way to enter and leave levels without it just being like, okay, there's just a menu. Okay, influences. So a lot of different things influenced this game as I was making it. One was Electroplankton. It's this game on the Nintendo DS where it's, once again, not really a game. It's kind of a synthesizer in a weird way. You control these little like fish creatures, and as they like collide with things, and as you tap them, they make different notes and different arpeggios and in various scales. And it's the sort of thing that I've actually seen it like live in people's like music sets. And I just think it's really cool that a game can do that, and that's something that really inspired the interactive soundscape sort of thing that we have going on in Nour. Because I did kind of picture like folks playing the game and sampling it, and there's actually specifically in the toast level, if you break the toasters, it goes into like kind of this like trap sequencer sort of thing, and like I'm just like hoping that someone is able to like sample that, because it was just like a really cool thing that that Max and James cooked up. And another influence was like food blogs and ads. I really liked how in food commercials there's just a complete exaggeration of the food to the point where like it's not even edible anymore. You know, they're spraying it with all sorts of like chemicals and stuff to make it like glisten. But it looks really good in like framed up and like composited into an advertisement. And I really liked that concept of just the synthetic combined with organic, and I felt like in a lot of ways Nour kind of embodied that, because you'll see an example later on, but a lot of the foods in the game are foods that I've actually eaten in real life, and so like it'll just be like a sandwich that I disassembled and took pictures of and then sampled that as the textures. And stuff like that. Like a lot of the textures, not all of them are like that, but yeah, a good amount. And as well as that, anime food gifs, of course. Studio Ghibli, like just amazing at rendering 2D food. I wanted to see if 3D could give food the same kind of love and same kind of attention to detail. And so just a lot of things that were just like kind of big on Tumblr for real was a lot of the inspiration. Just my inspiration folder is just full of random images that I kind of collect for things like this. Another thing that influenced it was around 2018, sort of the kind of SoundCloud scene sort of thing. All these artists that I have listed on screen, they were a part of a show called Jack LA, and everyone, it was kind of like a frenzy sort of, where like everyone was just like really inspired and like posting and doing shows together. And I saw that from afar, like this was all happening in Los Angeles, and then but like seeing it on the internet, it was just really exciting. I was just like, man, like, you know, I want to be friends with all these people. I want to do this sort of thing. It was really electrifying. And so I just love to kind of see that. That's what kind of really got me into the whole like pastel aesthetic, really. Like I went and got a windbreaker and like pastel like colored shoes as fast as I could, because I was just like, wow, I want to look like this. This is really, this feels like what I've been trying to get at as far as aesthetically, personally, and in my art. And it's another reason why I'm kind of sad to see sites like Twitter go in the direction that it is, because these are real like tangible communities being disrupted by like algorithms, profit incentives, and egos for real. Building a scene multiplies the desire to create in your immediate community, and that's something that seeing that scene, like having that influence me, that's something I just really realized and kind of took away. So my own visual style, influenced by all those things, I like to bump up the vibrance as much as possible without losing contrast, like losing any color or contrast is kind of my general visual style. Like I want things to be really, really pop and really be like bubblegummy, but without losing any of the gradients, without causing banding, which if you're in tech art, you'll kind of know about that. Just whenever a color is so saturated that you just like don't see any sort of definition. I always set the saturation to 1.2 in Nour scenes, like just enough to make things pop, but yeah, not enough to like actually lose any detail. I'm reminded of something. This is something I wrote on the PlayStation blog around when Nour was coming out. My brother and I had something on old CRT tube TVs, like how you could just like mess with all the settings and the menus. We would have something that we call tighter or brighter, and we're just like, okay, tighter, everything looks really cool, like the game actually looks really good, but then with brighter you could actually see everything, you could actually make out what's going on, and which was great for like dark scenes and stuff like that. I'm reminded of games that have you like adjust the brightness until you can see the weird icon before you actually start them, and yeah, I just find it interesting that like games will be launched to people's TVs at home that have who knows what kind of settings applied to them, and so it's interesting that like an artist can spend however long like adjusting all the like color grading and dials and stuff like that, only to be thwarted by maybe someone who has like motion smoothing on or something like that. So I feel like the biggest faux pas in any color work is clipping your colors, losing color data, and like strangling your gradients, unless of course you do it on purpose. With the rise of like these deep fried, artifacted, JPEG to hell and back, like internet art and memes, it's reminiscent of when a meme is like screenshotted and re-uploaded a ton. Like every time you do that, it just like introduces more artifacting, and I like the idea of having a digital item have wear and tear like a real photograph would, because I find that that often really changes the aesthetic of whatever you have, and I like that there's two different directions that can go in with like an actual photograph that gets worn and kind of sepia toned, and then like just a really JPEG image where it's just like, what did the actual like full image of this look like? Who knows? And even music has been doing something similar with the same kind of scenes that I mentioned earlier, with hyperpop artists using vocals and 808 kicks so loud that they actually clip the audio spectrum. And I know like a lot of old head audio engineers are really offended by that, but we kind of just did that anyway. And like I really like the sound. I really like how just it gives a new expression to any sound that you sort of do that effect on. And a little side note, people say that, I've heard a lot of folks say that MP3 quality decays every time you open it, but I don't know if that's actually true. I can't really find a straight answer on like if that's a thing or like if someone just like made that up. So definitely, I don't know, someone in the comments, like someone in chat, like clarify that for me, please. So, something that I had been thinking about recently, I was looking into the concept of I was just researching a little bit about evolution. I probably learned a bit of, I probably learned this exact thing actually in high school. But in the process of evolution, I was wondering how our biology knows what to try and what things to put to the challenge of natural selection. But I learned that it doesn't. From what I read, mutations occur basically randomly, and then natural selection is what acts on that randomness. So in this kind of pseudo-intellectual way, I kind of like applied that. I was just like, it baked into us is this kind of randomness, and in every way we're just like throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks. And that kind of proved to me that we're inevitably unique, and that's why your perspective really matters, even if it might not feel like it. It's why if you really focus on your interests, whether you realize it or not, you have your own style in the things you do. I was going to cut this slide, but this is my process, kind of. This is what you'll see on my screen if you if you're on an airplane with me and you just like kind of look over and you just see stuff like this. This is me making PBR materials for the bacon in the game. I take it into something called bitmap2 material that will generate full PBR maps for me with a bunch of sliders. That's part of how I get the look that I do is I do all the maps like albedo, normal map, sometimes specular, metallic, all that stuff. So that's just like a little aside. So to talk about shaders a little bit, just zooming in even further on the visual style side of things, there was something that Freya Olmer, I hope I'm saying her name right, something that she said that really was essential in me understanding how shader code really works, which is that fragment shaders are like big for loops that set the color on every pixel. That was essential to my understanding because just looking at shader code, I wasn't sure why it did what it did. I just know that it worked and knew how to like change values and stuff like that. But after that, I kind of just realized like how much you can really do and like how I can actually start to grasp it. If I had to choose a favorite effect that I've done in Nour, it would probably be the ripples of the soup shader in the ramen scene. I've made and remade the soup shaders so many times, and I'm glad it turned out so dynamic. So a lot of this code is based on stuff I've seen on shadertoy.com. Really good website for, like, it's basically like a shader library kind of. You can kind of just look at different projects that folks have made and create a WebGL shader that basically is just makes shaders so you can upload them as like a post almost. And there's live like a code box where you can just like change things around, and it's just a really good resource for learning shaders in a really applied way. A lot of it I'll look at and not really know what's going on, but it's a super valuable resource. So this effect is compute shader based. So basically, to render textures recursively sample each other, and so that the result of the last frame can be acted upon, and so forth. And then every frame, the pixel's brightness is decreased by 0.025, so that there's a loss of energy over time. That's what's actually making the ripple like decay, so it's not like building up forever and ever. And this black and white texture you see here is sampled as a vertical vertex offset, and so that's what's actually creating a physical ripple here. And normals are also calculated, so I can feed that into the normal map. I can use that as distortion, with red being like horizontal, like pixel offset, green being vertical. And beautiful thing about these textures is they're like, I think they're like 64 by 64, so like they're not even large like at all. But once you apply it to this effect, it's smoothed out enough to where it really just looks like a pretty nice, like, high fidelity ripple. And it also all happens on the GPU, so it's just like super performant. Something that's always helped me is also having a command buffer on the side that has the current frame rendered to it, but it has a Gaussian blur. Gaussian? I don't really know how to pronounce that. And it's set up as a global texture, so if I understand correctly, I can just sample it as many times as I want without having to like recalculate the blur each time. And this is helpful in a lot of different effects, from milk tea to the refraction on the gummy worms. And it's a cheap way to make a like frosted glass effect, the kind of the same stuff that you see in modern UI, like it's all over iOS and stuff like that. So that's just something that's really useful if you want to know how to actually do it. I don't know, you can like consult me. I'll like hook you up. Use that. Just the tech art process of this game is really interesting. Yeah, bread on a scanner. That's Trader Joe's bread. Yeah, I try to just not waste any food. I definitely ate this bread after I did this. And this is kind of how it turns out. I bring it into that same program, bitmap 2 material, and that ends up as a material. I sample things using like, I believe it's like the clone tool. I remove any blemishes and stuff like that. And that's kind of where it kind of ties into the food ads and like synthetic food and stuff like that. There's a lot of like touching up of little things that make food imperfect, and I like that. Even though it's a completely real image, like you might not be able to tell that it's touched up a bit. So the personal experience of making Nour, definitely want to touch on. The game's existence is kind of an anomaly for real. It's not powered by capital. You know, I had nothing going into this project. It's not really from exploitation. I didn't, say like, hey, like, promise of money if you just work for me for free on this game. Like, it was really just a series of folks who really cared coming together and throwing their support at a game that they really believed in. I did a Kickstarter back in 2017 at the suggestion of many folks around me. I made sure to get feedback on it before it went live. And getting funded on there went pretty well. We raised $27K out of a $25K goal with a just outpouring of support from the internet and Twitter at the time. RIP Game Dev Twitter. It's not really dead, but and one like setback or like thing I kind of wish I did better was like calibrating my sense of how easy it is to like overpromise and undeliver. Which is interesting because I was really cognizant of those things going into Kickstarter. I was just like, okay, I'm going to keep my goals really realistic and really make it to where like I deliver on all my promises. And even then, it's still easy to like kind of get carried away and just do more than you really can, or like being able to predict future setbacks that might come up along the way. As well, so like the Kickstarter definitely funded me for a good bit, but Nour also, during the project, I got involved with Panic, based out in Portland, who did Firewatch and Untitled Goose Game, and that was a really, I guess, like kind of blessed interaction that I happened to meet Cable at a conference, at Layers conference that my friend was throwing, and it was just really like kind of happenstance. I wasn't really looking for a publisher, and I found that this game is kind of a series of lightning striking in various moments in a completely like welcomed but unintentional way, and that happens in as far as like getting a publisher and how the game came to be, and also how it was developed as well. Like a lot of the suggestions of what to put in the game came from people playing it and being like, this would be a really interesting thing to add, and then I kind of just like gratify that. And also like making this game during the height of the pandemic, I feel like it really affected the design. I knew something valuable was missing without those in-person events to get the immediate face-to-face feedback. I feel like there are a lot of decisions that I would have, or at least things that would have been iterated on before release had I had more opportunities to have that in-person feedback. I think like the only like in-person event I've done since like doing all those exhibits, then the pandemic happens. I think PAX, like when Nour was at PAX in 2023, I believe. I think that was the last time or like the first time I did a in-person live event demo with the controller, well, without the MIDI fighter controller, but with like a DualSense. But yeah, just the events like that are definitely huge as far as games kind of designing themselves in a way. More on the personal aspect of making Nour. At some point, I became a Tumblr meme accidentally. It was a Polygon video that I was in 2017, and I didn't think much of it at the time, but I knew something was up when I opened Twitter, and I'd gained 3,000 followers in 10 minutes. I was like, oh, the interview must have went live. And I had wished I was prepared for that moment, really. Like, I wish I had like a PR 101 class leading up to that moment, because I kind of had no idea how to wrangle all of that attention and turn it into a solid, consistent community. Honestly, I was overwhelmed at the time. I was like, I'm not sure what to kind of do with all of this. And it definitely felt like a sort of 15 minutes of fame sort of situation. But I will say it was good as far as getting my name on the radar for like making games and having eyes on my work. And also, like, speaking to the complete accident nature of making Nour, I didn't even remember that I had a video that day that I put on this outfit, and so I feel like that partly contributed to the mini virality that kind of came of this. Total accident. On the side of mental health and physical health, because they're so closely intertwined, ADHD and executive dysfunction was something that definitely impacted me while making this project, especially during the pandemic. We're all under stress, of course, but just you had to take care of all aspects of yourself to keep creating. Of course, I do know a lot of works by artists that were made from just like going on complete like artist benders, and just like, you know, we have game jams in our community, but it's just like taking care of yourself is so important, and that means exercise too. And that's something that's easy to neglect, especially during the pandemic. And I actually kind of have a bit of a solution that worked for me, as far as like, I wish I had done this more during the actual development of the game. I kind of discovered this afterwards, but get a climbing membership. Just go to a climbing gym. Like, if you have ADHD, like a regular gym probably isn't gonna cut it. You're going there. You probably don't have a like regimen unless you have like a really yoked friend to tell you what to do. I was lucky enough to have that, but like I just kind of, my experience is that I show up to the gym and I'm just like, I don't know what to do, and I do some probably like useless exercise. Then I go home, and then that's like $30 a month down the drain. Climbing gym, you go there. There's linear progression. There's like ratings on each route. The goal is get to the top. Just grab a rock, start going. Your forearms get huge, and like your brain starts emitting like, what is it, BDNF, the brain-derived neurotrophic factor, that like helps kind of all around everything. Really good for focus and curbing brain fog and stuff like that. That's something that I would recommend every game developer do that. I wanted to touch on as well scope creep. Of course, that's a huge thing, like scope creep crunch. But I feel like scope creep is an addiction in a lot of ways, and I feel like it results from anxieties around a project not being good enough. And to kind of curb that, I would suggest close and diverse feedback to judge whether or not changes that you want to make are really warranted. And once again, that's something that I wish I had more of during, like while making the game during the pandemic. And like you want to get feedback as well from folks who like don't mind hurting your feelings as well. Like that's something for sure, because you know, if you ask folks that are all close to you, I'll find that like some things don't get pointed out, or some like honest or brutal truths might not stand out, or might not get suggested to you. I also, while making this game, kind of learned that there isn't much difference between arcade games and exhibition games. Both benefit from having an attract screen, something to where that like the game kind of plays itself, and folks can kind of see that and like come up and interact with it. That's something that we did during Coda, even the interactive exhibit with the art reliquaries, that you know, even something that's not a game can really benefit from having a track screen, just if it's interactive at all. And I would say that also between arcade games and exhibition games, both have a less than ideal value proposition as if it's sold as a standalone product. So pricing a game like Nour was really difficult, because on one hand you want to be compensated and recognized for your work, but on another hand it's like unless the player really understands that it's an art project, they might not understand really like what they're buying really. And that kind of brings me to the game's reception itself. So Nour was sitting at a mostly negative rating at some point, and now I believe it's sitting at mixed on Steam. And it's interesting because every time I see people playing it, like they're having a blast, and I think there is some disconnect between the at-home like sit-down experience and the live playing of the game. Somehow we created an award-nominated, internationally exhibited game that people hate to buy, I guess. It was a really interesting thing to kind of see happen. Like I'm not gonna completely throw Steam under the bus. Like I think overall it was kind of mixed reception, but I think it lends to, once again, the like importance of those in-person events, because people at events, like I genuinely see they love playing Nour. So I also got to thinking about organic reach versus the public eye, because I think it was around when the game was announced for consoles, that's when a bit more of the like scrutinous comments came in, like comments calling the game like like a tech demo basically, or something like that. Just like a lot more like either neutral to scathing like comments from when the game was first announced, because like you saw those comments on the earlier slide, it was kind of all that for a really long time until the reach kind of went beyond my immediate community. And that's something it's been interesting. I don't really have a like a way to like kind of curb that or anything like that. It's just something that I think that like algorithms and like just reaching out or spreading the word on your game like out of your immediate bubble, I think it's kind of inevitable in a way. And so yeah, it's just like really interesting how many different ways people can view the same thing, and I think a lot of it too has to do with the connection to the creator. Because when those folks in my immediate community see the game, they see me along with it, like demoing in person. You know, you get to meet me, you get to have a conversation with me. I think like once that face is sort of a few steps removed from the actual product itself, I think it becomes a lot more. People just become a lot less like empathetic towards like the concept of like, oh, a person made this. So that's something I've kind of found. And also there's folks expecting games to kind of stay within a certain genre. You know, you get hardcore gamers, casual gamers, and the occasional like straight up troll. But like I find that the kind of person who really likes Nour, like I don't know, it can kind of be anyone. I've seen kids enjoy the game. I've seen older folks who don't really game enjoy it. So yeah, just proximity to the creator is an interesting thing that I find that people sort of enjoy. Like people just like to have that. And so my dream is for artists to be less burdened by the complexities of bringing their ideas to life. I wish for projects like mine to get on the platforms they need to be. I want games like this getting on the platforms they need to be an attainable and like sustainable goal. And also I want more passion projects made by people with no resources to succeed. That's all, and I've been TJ Hughes. Thank you so much for listening.
Smart.
Yeah, if that's not going to be distracting.
Okay. Maybe if it's like not full audio.
Yeah, I can do that.
About how long till I switch to audience questions?
8:07 now, so you have about 20 minutes of so I can just signal when it's like 10 minutes.
Cool.
Yeah.
So we'll take audience questions here in a couple minutes, but I have some questions of my own, and I swear I'm going to ask like actual game dev design questions, but you mentioned toaster ravioli, and I do need you to explain what that means.
Yeah, so St. Louis, right? We have toaster ravioli. It's basically breaded ravioli it's just like deep fried, super good.
And you cook it in the
go wrong.
toaster. Like
No, it's toasted.
oh,
toasted
toaster,
yeah.
and I was like, oh, you're putting a
toaster
whole
ravioli.
like pasta chunk in there.
I mean, you probably could like. You can make it an air fryer. It's not that much different.
Like the toaster would blow up probably.
yeah. I wouldn't recommend it, but
Yeah. Okay, so you worked on Nour for 7 years.
Yes, give or take.
And also, you've been making games in Unity at least since you were 13, right?
Yes.
How many years is that? How old are you now?
I'm 28, so whatever the math is.
Oh man. Okay, so that's like a long time.
Yeah.
And it sounds like the pandemic with Nour, took a mental toll, and you got burnt out. What was the point you sensed that you were burnt out? When did you know?
It was when I had to reply to an email concerning the game, and it was just like a few sentences long, but it took me 4 hours. I was like, that's not normal. And so I don't have an actual diagnosis, but that made me interested in seeking a diagnosis for ADHD because I would kind of notice like things like that where it's just like, wow, I'm like taking really long to do this very basic thing. Like I need an explanation sort of thing. And so that's kind of when I realized. And I thankfully after Nour, I was able to like chill out for a little bit, like it pretty much chilled for a year. We worked on the port, of course, but that was mostly on the porting company, so that's good. But yeah, like I wish I had that climbing gym membership. I feel like it would have kind of gotten me through that.
Do you have any other recommendations for, sustainably working on a long project?
Meditation. That's a whole can of worms. Just like breaks. If you have anything that gets you away from the screen, something I've been doing recently is like just taking up like random jobs. Like recently, I worked at a grocery store just to be like, all right, I need something that gets me on my feet, away from the desk, and like talking to people face to face. It's like we're human. We're supposed to use our different senses. And, during the pandemic, we're just sitting at our screens. Like different parts of our brain like atrophy because we're just not using them. We're not having that face to face contact, So I definitely would just recommend like anything that gets you away from the screen. Like I think screen time is fine to have, especially if you're a creative, but it's just like, you're gonna need periods of time that get you away from that, especially with things that kind of hijack your brain, like reels. Like everything has like reels now. Everything's TikTok, and that really affected me. Like I'll just find myself like I just have the kind of brain to where that just gets me. It hijacks your dopamine system. You're just like, I just want to do this all day, but I don't actually want to, but I just feel compelled to.
I feel like Nour is like very like TikTok like ready. Like it would do well. Have you ever posted anything on TikTok in terms of like stuff you're working on?
I made one, maybe like 2 TikToks to sort of like try out the format. I don't really understand it. Like I get it, but I don't understand how to be good at it, how to make content for it. Like I don't know. I don't think I'm Gen Z enough for it.
That's fair. That's fair.
I'm learning.
I guess like on the subject of screen and screen time, how did Twitch Plays Nour come to be about? I think there's an interesting connection there with like exhibitions, right?
Yeah, it's something that was an idea for a long time because Nour is just an amalgamation of like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if type things. And that was one of the early ones. Another one is VR Nour, but that's a lot of work. We haven't done that yet. But it's something that after release, my teammate Maximilian, he just coded the whole thing. He just showed up one day and was like, hey, I got Twitch Plays Nour working. And I was just like, what, really? And so this was the first time we're actually testing it with a live audience. So super glad we got to do that.
I think it worked really well. And it's currently working.
Yeah,
things are happening.
Kind of going crazy.
There is a knife. Cool. I am curious, you mentioned like wear and tear on images, right? Like the idea of like a digital thing, like having that wear and tear. And it got me curious. Could you imagine like a wear and tear for interactions in a game?
Yeah, actually, something I've wanted to do for a long time is hook the game up to actual fruits, which is something that you can do. There's a device called the Makey, and you can hook it up to like anything conductive, basically. So I could hook it up to like a banana, and then anytime you touch the banana, like something can appear on the screen. So that's something I still really want to do, and that's kind of my idea of like, okay, the controller bruises now, and eventually we'll get to a point where you're not gonna want to touch it. So I kind of want to see how far people take it, and like, I don't know, have like a thing of Germex there, or like, I don't know, hand washing station.
The diseases are a part of the experience.
Yeah,
that's the wear and tear as well.
Yeah, definitely don't. That's the only bit of food waste that I think will come from this project.
Have you actually experimented with any other controllers? I know you used controllers, keyboard, mouse, obviously, MIDI controller. Have you ever actually tried other things?
There's been an actual piano roll keyboard. I know someone hooked up a launch pad to the game before, and that's been fun. Can't think that there's anything else. I had an idea of there's like a MIDI guitar that would be cool to see folks just like shredding to Nour. And there's probably something else that's escaping my mind right now that I can't think of. But yeah, we've tried quite a few different types of controllers.
Cool. At the beginning of your presentation, you talked a lot about water. You had that you like to look at the water in games, but there's a distinct lack, not a lack. There is some liquid in Nour, but there's more solids. Have you ever thought about making something with more liquids and waters?
If I could, if technology caught up to this, the game would be all liquid and soft bodies. I would just have that all day. But it's really expensive to have real-time fluids. There's actually a few in Nour. We probably can't see any during this demo. But yeah, real-time fluid physics is something that I'm really interested in. And I think that's something where I would learn how to read math notation just to figure out how to simulate that. Yeah, we're not quite there yet. We're actually kind of getting there. I know AI is a contentious thing, but I'm just okay, can we just not be mad at AI long enough just to have real-time fluid simulation, and then every other, we shouldn't be using it to generate images and do art. Why are we doing that?
We need to make water and cool art games with said water. I think that's fair. That's
yeah. Because I feel like technology was supposed to do really cool things, and then profit incentives struck, and now we're replacing artists. It's no, don't do that.
For sure. Should we go to questions now? Maybe. There's more hoverboards. Are there any other secret keywords that they could throw in there?
There's so many. I don't know if I've seen someone do Oreo yet.
Oreo?
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's actually real time. That's crazy. I'm blanking on. It's a really cool one.
Are there sprinkles?
I don't think you can do sprinkles just because it's try it. I don't think you can, but. Yeah. I don't know if anyone's done zero gravity yet. I don't know the exact command off the top of my head, but.
Oh, there they go.
Brilliant. But yeah, no, just experiment. Just whatever you can do. Try things.
Cool. What's your favorite food?
Yes. The burning question. I think chicken tikka masala is that's my favorite dish. I guess that's not a specific food, but yeah, definitely that. Second place is specifically rice, beans, and plantains with sour cream. For some reason, that combination of food is just ratatouille moment. You're just whoa, so good.
That's awesome. What was your favorite food to make in a version of in the game?
Ooh. That's a good question. Probably the hamburger, just because it was such a process of dissecting the burger, taking pictures front and back of each part, scanning it in, and then putting it back together. Because I was just dang, this is a $15 burger. I'm gonna eat this still, and yeah, just getting to sample a restaurant from my hometown. I think that burger came from Michael's Bar and Grill in Maplewood, St. Louis, Missouri. So I don't know. Yeah, shout out to them.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks.
Hi, I was just gonna ask, when you talked about touching up textures and stuff and making I don't know, for some reason that blew my, I don't know, I got really excited about the idea of all this food being this idealized perfect food. I don't know if you could just talk a little bit more about I don't know, your thought process behind having like really perfect food versus having like a piece of bread that has like weird imperfections or something like that.
Right. Well, to keep the like asset count low, a lot of the foods in the game will be like, I want to make it as generic as possible while also still being like eye-catching. So like I would just use the clone stamp tool to remove any sort of like, maybe there's like a burnt piece of onion like stuck to the bun or something. I'll remove stuff like that, or maybe it got like pierced by a fork. But at the same time, like having 20 copies of the same 3D model, like you're bound to notice. But something I find that masks that really well is just rotating it a little bit. Like for some reason, you could just have a ton. Like in the popcorn scene in the game, there's maybe 2 different popcorn models, but it just looks like a full like pile of popcorn. And it's in the same way that like a lot of AAA games will use the same like 2 rock 3D models just scaled and rotated in different ways throughout the entire game. Like you can get a lot of mileage out of just the same asset. So I would just recommend just like whatever you can, just rotate it a little bit, add like one little extra detail, and yeah, save that memory and batch those draw calls. Yeah, just use the same thing over and over again. Recycle, reduce, reuse, recycle.
On the note of like favorite foods, do you have like actually a least favorite food? We were too positive about food for the last hour.
I love so much food. There's not a lot of. I haven't met a bad food. Probably. I was gonna say, okay, specifically boiled Brussels sprouts. If you boil Brussels sprouts, it ruins them. I'm sorry, it's just so bad.
Roasted is fine.
Yeah, roasted is great. It's fantastic, dare I say.
Totally.
Do not boil them.
Cool.
Sure. So Nour isn't really linear in any sense of the word, but do you think that you were trying to convey any like themes or messages with the game? And if so, how do you think you did that?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest messages that interestingly, there weren't a lot of messages I was really trying to convey. Like, I didn't have an idea in my head, but just from like talking to friends and having interviews and stuff like that, that kind of revealed the like deep down artistic intent, because it was these amazing takeaways that folks kind of have from the game that really got me realizing like, oh yeah, this is kind of what I'm trying to say, like in the underline of the entire experience. And one of those things was that like play is universal, and that really was a huge impact to me, because when I was showing the game in South Korea, I remember setting it up, and when I was testing it out, and I was watching folks come up and start playing it, and one man who didn't speak a lick of English just like looked back at me and just thumbs up, and that was his best way that he can convey to me like, I really dig this experience. And that was just a huge moment for me. I was just like, wow, like, yeah, we don't even have to speak the same dialect, like for folks to be able to relate to play. Like, it's just something that we all do. It's something, and as well as food. Like, I don't know, like, there's so many foodies out there. There are some people who aren't foodies, which is interesting. They just don't really enjoy eating. They can eat the same thing over and over again. But like, I don't know. But at the same time, like, everyone, a lot of people have nostalgia, at least, for food, and that's what kind of evokes a lot of different conversations. And it really serves as a way to connect with people really easily, because it's just like, okay, now I'm hearing about your childhood, like, the food that your grandma would fix for you, and it's like, I just met this person. I just think that's really cool.
Totally. Has anybody been like genuinely like, I am hungry now, I have to leave, like I have to stop playing and
Definitely.
go eat immediately?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I'm saying. I'm surprised there's no like sponsorships that have resulted from this game. Like if anyone's out there, like, I'm with it. Like, please.
Is there anything like you were working on for Nour that like, because it has such a strong style, like I said, that just didn't work stylistically, or like was you could like figure out a way to put it in, but you were really excited about and sad to cut?
Oh, something that I had to cut
Yeah.
but couldn't make it in. One thing is like in the game files there's a blender scene. Like it's just a blender and it actually like live blends things, but the game hangs for a solid like 2 seconds anytime you put anything into it. So I couldn't figure out how to like actually simulate that in a fair way. Can't think if there's anything else. There's this like toast effect that I did where you can take a blowtorch and like toast items, and it would use a render texture to actually like burn the item in the exact place that you like blowtorched it. But just the memory considerations were insane, and I'm just not at like good enough at coding to like kind of resolve that quite yet. But maybe in an update I can add that. That was probably, aside from the soup shader, probably one of the best effects I've come up with.
So I guess this kind of goes into it. You've been working on it for so long, 7 years. You're done, and you're thinking now about updates. I guess one thing I'm really curious about is how you kind of was like emotionally handling how the game like expanded over time, and like I guess do you maybe wish it was shorter? Like, do you wish that it had happened sooner, or do you think that like this is just the amount of time that it took, right? How do you look at the sort of management and the release of the game now that it's actually out?
I am an overthink king, and so I feel like a lot of the game actually could have been simpler. But at the same time, I'm really glad that we got to try all the things that we did, because there's a lot of features that if I were to see it like maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I would just not even recognize it. I'd be like, whoa, we added that to the game, like what? My advice to my past self is always just cut it, man. Just cut it. Like, just run with it. Like, yeah, you don't have to go this far in. And and part of me wonders if it were launched before the pandemic, kind of what that would look like and how different a game it would be. Not saying that that's a better timeline or anything. I'm just really curious about it. I feel like there was more to your question, but.
Oh, I was going to ask if there was more to the question.
There are some questions from the Twitch chat. There was a question about, of the different levels, is there one that stands out as your favorite? And then then someone else had a question about what different kinds of events you've shown this at. Is there a difference? And my personal question on that would be how does showing it in say a gallery setting versus, or like an art installation setting versus like a convention, like a PAX kind of setting?
Yeah. So, okay, first question was, second one was about events and stuff
First
like
one
that.
was
And then the
favorite
first was
scene,
favorite scene. Okay, yeah. Favorite scene is probably ramen, just because it's sort of the poster child of the whole experience. Max calls it the Hyrule Castle of the game because it has everything that sort of encapsulates what Nour is about all in one spot, and also it has the soup shader. I'm just so happy I got that working. But also the ice cream scene. I think that's definitely the most unique scene, and one that as soon as it appeared in my brain, the resulting scene, it looks exactly like the image that just popped up in my head, which I'm just really happy that I'm at a point artistically where I can get it so close to the initial Eureka image that pops up. As far as exhibitions go, I've shown it at a wide range of so it's been in Shanghai. I didn't get to go to that exhibition, unfortunately. It looked really cool. It's in South Korea and Gwangju at the Asia Culture Center. It was shown at Amsterdam at the IDFA Doc Lab, where we met actually, and so I got to do quite a bit of travel with the game, which was really cool. This game is the reason I was able to leave the country for the first time and just have a lot of just worldly life experience. This journey has really led me to a lot of different places. But those are kind of the amazing ones. I've also just shown it at DIY house shows, like a friend just being yo, I'm having some folks over. Can you just put this on the TV and like folks can just play it. And I'm like, yeah, sure. And so it just has like crazy settings where people kind of just like come up to me and it was just like, whoa, like you made that? Like, you know, it's just like the most like casual setting is just like, here's a whole video game that I made. And so it's just a really interesting thing to just have that as part of you, is just like I just make little interactive things and bring it around. It's just like a really fun thing. One of my plans is actually to get a projector and just like kind of just show it wherever, like just sides of buildings and whatnot. So like I don't know, yeah, it's just like a fun thing. Like I don't know, make little interactive projects and just put them up places. You never know what'll happen.
Nice, cool. I think that about does it in terms of questions and our time here with TJ. Thank all of you again for coming. Again, this is our last lecture series of the semester, but please stay tuned for announcements about speakers for next semester's lecture series. I tried to come up with a clever way to hint at this in my head. I could not, so I'm just gonna say maybe like someone from Baldur's Gate will be coming and giving a lecture, and that would be pretty cool, right? Okay, y'all. Thanks so much. See you around.
Thank you all.